Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the founder of Art of Drawers, Allan Young. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to have you on. So, Allan, you've been you're a veteran of franchising. This is not your first go around with Art of Drawers. I understand you are the founder of Shelf Genie, a 205 unit chain that you built. But you're here to talk about Art of Drawers. So let's get started. How did you get started with this?
Yeah, so really started with Shelf Genie. Shelf Genie, we do custom pull-out shelving for kitchen cabinets and pantries. Very similar to a closet concept, but we go into people's kitchens, their cabinets and pantries instead of their closets, and organize them with custom products. Started that in 2006, franchised it in 2008, and we grew very quickly. So, the Great Recession hit the fall of 2008. That's the exact moment we decided to franchise. Obviously, that was not anything we saw coming, along with most people. And so, that was a pretty terrifying moment for everybody.
Yeah.
But it turned out that was a really good thing for us. We're an Inc. 500 company, 2009, 10, 11. We grew really quickly, really for a couple reasons. In a recession, franchising does typically very well. You have a lot of what I call forced entrepreneurs. They lost their six-figure job. They're looking, they're sitting on their nest egg. Their balance sheet starts getting whittled away, and they're like, "Do I get another job?" And a lot of them have kind of figured out that safety net of having that job really isn't a safety net. You can get laid off, you can get fired, any of those things can happen. So, we got a lot of folks, really good folks out of corporate America that joined our team, but also, people stopped doing those big renovations when cash is flowing all over the place, just like we've seen the last few years, plus 2006, 7, beginning of 8. People are gutting their kitchens. We still got a lot of work. We do well when the economy's doing well, but they stopped gutting their kitchens and doing these big projects and do smaller, affordable upgrades. So that's what we found with Shelf Genie, and we grew very quickly. 2016 was a year, and I remember it was kind of the spring. We'd just try to roll out a really basic product, like we just add another product to the mix out of all the things we do, and it took forever to get it out. I think it was 6 months before the system adopted, because you have hundreds and hundreds of people in the field with all your franchise partners and designers, installers. And, innovation really just kind of came to a screeching halt, around that time. And that was really frustrating for me, because I love to build and innovate and grow. So Art of Drawers was actually born out of that experience. So the idea was that I would start Art of Drawers, upgrade the brand, upgrade the products, the materials, the way we did things, all the innovation, technology that I really wanted to do, but became very difficult, if not impossible, to do at that point. And we would award that franchise to our top performing franchise partners, the ones that really were capable of innovating. So that was the idea. And as I started building that out, Neighborly came along, and my partners had an interest in selling. We had some investors. They've been, on the bus for over a decade, and we could get them a really good return. So I agreed to sell Shelf Genie, but I did not want to sell Art of Drawers in that concept. And we had also spent about $5 million building a tech package that it's a full CRM, but it also manages all the complexity of our business. There's a reason why our industry, there's no one out there that does it at scale other than Shelf Genie and now Art of Drawers. So I licensed that technology platform to Neighborly, to Shelf Genie, but kept it. And now that's what Art of Drawers is doing. And really what I'm most excited about is with Art of Drawers, we're using our franchise partners to launch building an industry. So we started franchising the fall of last year. We're up to 24 units in 6 different markets. So we're growing very quickly. We've got another couple that are closing in the next few days, and we've got a great pipeline. So we're looking at adding about 100 units this year with 25 to 30 franchise partners.
Wow, that's incredible growth. But somebody such as yourself who has been there and done that can certainly handle it. It's not for the faint of heart. An emerging franchisor that maybe their first go around, I don't necessarily suggest opening 100 units that quickly.
No, it helps us because we don't have, build out. So I think any brick and mortar locate, that's where you
Sure.
get a lot of people, you just sell a lot and they can't find and open them. Our franchise partners open within 30 days.
Yeah.
They start cash flowing very quickly after that. But I really spent, 2019 is when I started building it out. And really from the very beginning, started with the end in mind of franchising.
Mhm.
So we spent 4 years building out everything just to franchise. So everything we did was very intentional with the idea of franchising. Having done it before, one of the big mistakes that I made, and there's a lot of them that I made with Shelf Genie, so it's been a lot of fun to go back and start over. You don't get too many chances for a do-over.
Right.
Like going back to high school and doing all those things over again. Going back to franchise again. And one of the big mistakes I made, and I think a lot of people do, is I built the organization from the bottom up. And what that means is, it always starts out day one as you, and then you hire some people to do some things, and you get enough people that do things. So you hire some people to manage those people that do things. And then when you get enough of those people managing, you hire some directors to manage those people, and then you hire C-level, and you're really building the organization from the ground up. And that's really, really hard to do because, having that leadership team, and I always struggled trying to work myself out of a job, and I
Mhm.
never could quite get there because there's always that extra layer. So I invested very heavily in building a senior management team in the very beginning, and they're the ones that are building out the organization. I'm involved, but having that senior leadership team that's going to stay with you versus finally getting to the point where you have that senior leadership team and you're building on top of probably not the best foundation, because when you start, the people that you're starting with aren't the ones that are always going to get you to the end.
I'm smiling like from ear to ear as you're talking, because that is exactly what I experienced myself. It was the mistake that I think a lot of us founders make. First of all, we can only afford what we can afford, right?
Yep.
So we're like, I need this job done and I need marketing done. And oh crap, I need training done. I need somebody I need some admin work. But we find ourselves having a very nice staff, people who are, they're dedicated, they want to win, but it might not necessarily be the right team, the right horses that you need to really be a successful franchisor. And I'm smiling as you're saying all of this because I went through the same point in time when I finally hired for my weakness and I hired senior folks. I did have one person though in my organization from the very beginning that started out as a bookkeeper and is today like the CFO today. And that is an anomaly where this one person was able to really grow and adapt. So she is the definitely anomaly in my entire 20 plus year career. But for the most part, it was a lot of, I need to get this role filled and this role filled and just kind of getting tasks done. Everything changed for my company once I hired a COO president and we started building bench strength. We started really developing departments and it took the pressure off of us, but we became like a real company at that point.
Yep. Getting people that are going to adapt and grow. So that's one of the things when you're running a company that's scaling very quickly, you go, and I've seen it happen so many times, it's painful to watch. You get these people that are heroes one day and you put them on a pedestal and they're the greatest thing ever. And 1 year later, you're letting them go. Because they can't adapt and grow. And the other thing, that kind of works with that is culture. So I've been very intentional about culture. We have 3 core values: think like an entrepreneur, act as one team, and deliver wow experience to our client. And we've defined those very specifically under each one, are about 4, 5, 6 very specific, this is what that means. So embrace failure if we know why, celebrate success if we know why. And, going into that, being candid, being vulnerable, asking for help. The platinum rule. Most people haven't heard the platinum rule. Whenever we hire somebody, I go through all of our values for about 15 minutes. And the golden rule is treat others as you like to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others as they would like to be treated, which is really helpful, especially when you're dealing with customers, because our demographic tends to be older and you get a 20, 30-year-old working with a customer, like treating them like it requires some education.
Mm-hmm.
But starting with culture and talking about values, we hire on values and we fire on values. And our values are designed where if you're a culture fit, it's really hard to not perform in our company unless you're sitting in a seat that you're not good at. you don't get it, want, or have the capacity for that seat. So we use the EOS model, Entrepreneur Operating System. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Hmm.
That was another game changer, is having an integrator that everybody reports to that person. Visionaries can be integrators for a while, but we get really bored and we get frustrated.
It's
Um,
exhausting.
yeah. But like you said, it requires resources, and that's the tough thing. If you're trying to cash flow the growth of your franchise, I think it's very dangerous. So starting out a franchise, and if you've already jumped into the lake and you're trying to swim, you're in it. So you're falling into my favorite definition of an entrepreneur, which is jumping out off a cliff and building the plane on the way down. But if at all possible, make sure you've got a lot more funding than you think you need, because then you can do some of these things. If not, you're building it from the ground up or building the plane after you've jumped off the cliff.
Right, which is exactly what I did. Did you bootstrap Shelf Genie, or did you take in outside money?
Started with $30,000. So we got to a point where in early 2008, we did bring on two investors with it for equity. Equity is the most expensive way you can capitalize your business, but I slept beautifully at night, not having debt hanging out there. Our balance sheet was always clean. So yeah, I brought in two investors that put in a sizable amount of money, and we gave them, a good percentage of the company. Nothing crazy, but and we that gave us the ability to do some things that we wouldn't have done. I self-funded Art of Drawers up until very recently, and I brought in a couple investors, mainly because what I've missed having those early investors. There's something about waking up every day, working, to give someone else a return other than yourself.
Hmm.
I call it like a slight push at the bottom, at the back, small your back. You don't want investors that are going to be shoving you, but getting some people who, one, they're investing, and if things don't work out, they can walk away from it and they're still they're unscathed. Maybe not super happy, but unscathed, and they know they're adults going into it. But I really missed that. So we did a small raise just to bring in some investors, and we're using those funds to do, a lot of really forward-thinking stuff that's going to pay off a couple years from now that we typically wouldn't do if we were. And we're well funded now. We have a clean balance sheet, but that's the main reason I brought some investors in.
Sure. And it is truly just up to the founder. It's up to their style on what they can handle, because on the flip side, there's folks that feel that they can sleep at night because they own 100% of the company as well, right? Some people feel like, oh, I don't have to answer to investors. But if you have the right investors that are providing more than just money, that are providing strategic guidance, or folks that you just believe in, they're winners in their experience, and you just want to lock, arm in arm and feeling like you can grow so much better with them. That's a great way to do it too.
I think as long as you're not giving up control, giving up a significant, and once you start getting the 60s and 70s, you start kind of locking yourself into maybe some future opportunities to bring in a minority partner or do some things. So, I think if you can stay like 80% above ownership in your company, you got some room to bring in some investors. And the expectation is, yeah, they're going to give you advice, counsel. I love having, monthly or quarterly calls with my investors to share that good news. There's not too many people you can share success with at this level.
Right.
That doesn't sound like bragging. But you have some investors, that's a place you can go, hey, we just killed it. This is what we just did. Or, we're having some challenges. Where can you help or get me to think straight about, this issue I'm facing?
Sure. Great advice, Allan. We glossed over sort of the history, and I want to bring it back because, look, we don't know when there's going to be another recession. We know it will happen, right? And you can even argue when a recession now, whatever. But when we go back to 2008, if you remember, we went through this. I remember it clear as day. We went through this cleansing in franchising, if you would. People who should not have been in franchising, who were surviving. They had a mediocre company in 2005, 6, 2007, and they survived because the economy was good, but they had a mediocre business. And then what happens during recession? You have a cleansing because it's survival of the fittest, and you can't hide anymore. What are your thoughts now about what it takes? What do people need to take right now in taking action if they have that business where they don't have their T's crossed, their I's dotted when it comes to operations and support, knowing that you don't know when the next recession is going to hit, but it's going to happen. And we saw this together, did we not?
Yeah. And I was fortunate because that was the only world we ever knew. So we started out with that, that world that everyone had to adapt to, but we didn't have to adapt to it.
Right.
That's where we started out. But I think it's really people. So starting out with having the right culture of people. And, I think it's really hard as you're growing fast to let go of people when you need to let go of them. You look at them and go, they're not doing a great job, but they're doing the job. And it's not bad, or it's not bad enough to fire them. You start coming up with all the excuses of why. And you're thinking in your head, like, I've got to let them go. And if once I let them go, then who's going to do that work while I'm trying to find someone else? And what if I don't find someone else? And what's going to happen there? And the reality is, we've all done this multiple times. No one in the history of employment has ever let someone go and wish they had waited longer. I challenge you to find anyone who says, yeah, I let them go, but I wish I waited a little bit longer to do it. Because all the problems start coming out and you just regret it over and over and over again, probably for the next, at least the next several months, and sometimes years. Things pop up and you realize what it was really costing you, not only in things that weren't working well and process and problems, but in culture. A players hate well, everybody hates C players,
Right.
and those should be the easy ones, but we tend to keep C players around for those reasons. But I think the most dangerous person in an organization is a B player that's never going to be an A player. Because what you're saying to your A players is, we don't know the difference between a B player and an A player. And A players want to be recognized as A players, and they don't like hanging out with B players. They're going to stay there at that B level, and they leave. They go somewhere else. So you're going to lose your A players trying to maintain and retain your B players.
That is fantastic observation. I would define, as I was thinking about my history, I define a B player as somebody who is capable and not willing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, in the EOS model, you look at culture. So if you're a culture fit in our company, the seat that you're sitting in, and we just went through a seats exercise. We do it every year to make sure we take everything that needs to be done in the organization, every minute, every hour, every week, month, quarter, year, and we put it on a sticky note. So if changing the soap out in the bathroom, if you don't have someone outsourced to do that, that goes on the list.
Right.
Thankfully, we outsource that. But that goes on the list, and they're all in sticky notes. And we go up on a board, and we're not thinking about names. So we're coming up with seats, and this is the good to great, the right people on the bus.
Yep.
So the bus is the culture, and the right people in the right seats. So we define the seats, and we put them in areas that we know make sense. Because oftentimes we build seats for people, like, oh, you're really good at this thing, we'll have you do this. And all of a sudden you have this position that doesn't make any sense. And once you're done with that, then you start going and putting the names on it. And it's a great exercise. It can go right in a very difficult way, because I've done it before, where, once you start putting names on it, there's someone in the room. It's almost like Duck, Duck, Goose, or the musical chairs, and the music stops playing. And I had that happen. I bought a manufacturing company because with Shelf Genie, we wanted to get vertically integrated. So the two owners, the president, and the head of operations came. We did the seats exercise for that manufacturing company, and also the person that was the plant manager. So there's three of them in the room, and they're the ones that came up with all these things. We put them on the board. They helped me organize it into all the right places. Here's the head person. Here's operations, sales, marketing, all the positions. And then we started putting names on it, as you do if that's the final thing you do. And, I looked at the president of the company, and here's the things you have to do. He goes, I don't want to do all those things. I would like some of them, but I'm not doing all that. And then, the head of operations, the other owner, was like, I'm not doing all those things. And even the plant manager was like, I'll do most of those things, but I'm not doing those two things. And they're the ones that had me come up with the seats. So they all walked out of the room without a job.
Wow.
And, yeah, because this is what the organization needs. This is what needs to be done. Now, because they're owners, they help, fill those positions, but they weren't super excited about that, because they just wanted a job, but they weren't going to fit in a seat. So once you define those seats, does that person get it? Do they want it and have the capacity? So that goes back to your B players. Sometimes it's want it. Sometimes it's capacity. I don't have the capacity to do most things in my organization because it requires sitting still for more than 3 to 4 minutes. Like I can do that, and I'm struggling right now to sit here, but I'm talking a lot, so that helps. But capacity doesn't mean you're not smart. Doesn't mean you can't do things. It's just for that position, you don't have the capacity to do it. And capacity could also be time if you don't have enough. If that job is really for 2 people, and that's a leader's responsibility to address that.
Yeah, for sure. I would come home. Look, I'm guilty as charged when I was starting out too. And I would come home, and probably I came home too many times in a row where I told my wife, this person needs to go. I talked to them. And you know what my answer used to be? I would say, we have bigger fish to fry than letting this person go, because I would do exactly what you said. Who is going to do this job? And I'm going to get stuck doing it. So keeping C players around is definitely not the right answer. And one more thing, for folks that are maybe new, that are emerging founders that are listening to you and I talking about this, they need to keep one thing in mind, is that by not letting that person go, you're really holding them back from the place.
There you go.
They're holding them back from the place that they really need to be, where they're going to thrive.
Yeah. And that really is the mindset, because it's absolutely true. I've let a lot of people go over the years. One of the times that happened was, I didn't have a culture in my company when I first started. That's something I learned later on when I got a CEO coach. And he's like, what are your values, your culture? I'm like, I don't know, work hard, get it done. And so we got the team together, came up with the values of the company. But very quickly, when you do that, like if you don't have a culture, it just sucks, because you got a whole bunch of them. So it's basically like high school. Everybody kind of figures out their groups, and this is what our culture is in this group. So, and you always have the bottom 20. So when we put in our culture, the bottom 20 that clearly weren't culture fits, you let them go and you bring in a new team that gets the speech. Here's our culture, here's our values, you're hiring for it. Now all of a sudden it levels up and there's a new bottom 20. So I had 98% intentional turnover over a 2-year period because of that. And when I say intentional, the plan wasn't to go in and do 98% turnover, but the plan was to get everyone to be a culture fit. So the bigger your organization is, the harder it is to change that culture. And it was painful for 2 years. And, someone I really respected that's, in a lot of leadership roles in large companies, who's done this before, he's like, 2 years is not a bad time frame to change the culture in your size company. So now is the time to do it. If you're emerging, start protecting that culture, because that's what's going to happen. But those people we let go, I've monitored, and they all found better places. And it's so much easier to let someone go because they're not a culture fit. Because what you're saying is, this is how we do things here. There's lots of cultures and companies. I had a media marketing manager who, she was terrified of me. I remember walking down the hallway, she was coming down the other way. And I remember she saw me, she very quickly turned around, went the other direction.
Oh no.
And I didn't scream or yet, but she was just intimidated with, the way we grow and fast. I often liken our, if you use a sports analogy, cultures are different, like different sports. So we're a rugby culture. We don't physically hit each other, but we're hard hitting, breaking through walls, like whatever we got to do. It's a different culture than, if you take a basketball player and throw him in a rugby game, it's not going to work out. So she went to IBM. I remember, I still was connected with her on LinkedIn, and she reposted something the CEO of IBM said, and was like, this is great. She would never would have reposted anything I said, because I wasn't her CEO. We weren't, our culture and values were not her culture and values, and that's okay.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Then you have to go where you need to go, where you're a better fit.
It just works out so much better, and it works out better for everybody.
You have me remembering a story. I had a director of marketing. Wasn't that she was intimidated by me, but she would say that she didn't want to disappoint me. It would be like disappointing her father, and that I always did whatever needed to be done in the company. So she felt bad if she couldn't perform. And you want to have a kind of team, though, that you truly care about each other. Obviously getting the right people on the bus and the right seat on the bus, not being afraid, though, not saying that you were a good fit back then, you're not a good fit now, but it becomes quite evident. Somebody knows when they're not a right fit anymore. The culture's changing. Maybe they start pulling back. And if a founder's listening to this, they need to start observing, right? Some of their staff who used to be really engaged, are they not engaged anymore because the culture's changed or the expectations have changed and they're not up for the challenge?
Yeah, and that's why I built in adapting and into our culture, innovating and adapting.
Right.
So if you hire people for that, and I love hiring people for potential and their potential to adapt and change and innovate versus the stuff they could do. I don't value what people know. I had someone, I was coaching them on what they're like, but I know all these things. I'm like, I don't really value that. I can teach, anybody can learn anything. We can teach people how to do things. So that's not what's of value. It's your ability to grow and adapt and your potential. So if you're hiring people like that, you don't fall in that trap, because it's the people that come in and they're doing things and they learn to do a lot of things. And then they start protecting the things they know, and they don't want to share it with other people because that's their job, job protection plan.
Allan, this is great stuff. I have one more question for you, just about the whole employee thing, and then I want to move on to Art of Drawers and talk about that. Assessment tools, DISC, predictive index. What are your thoughts on it? Have you used those before, and what's your opinion on them?
I like both. I like DISC, not for hiring. In fact, I think it's in some states you can get in trouble using that as a hiring tool. And it's really just not effective. I've hired people who are drivers, but they aren't culture fits. And just because you're a driver or an influencer, but I think it's great for learning for us how to interact. I'm a very high D. I'm like 99% D, and I've got a little bit of I just so I don't, crush people's dreams and maybe. I've learned to bring out some I when I need to, but and I get frustrated, and high D's and I's, but high D's get really frustrated with the C's, the conscientious people, because they just want to slow us down. But I've learned that I've got to have those people on my team. I've got to listen to them. And so just the reminder of, this is a C that I'm talking to that wants to slow things down, or a CS or an SC. I think that's really good for how do we interact. Predictive index is great. That's what we use for, here's a role, we fill it out, this is what we're looking for. I think it can be really good for franchise partners, to once you get some good ones, and you can, use those to make sure that people are coming in, at least to say, here's where you're going to struggle. And are you okay with, trying to overcome that? Because this is going to be an area that you're going to struggle with. I think both those tools, and the predictive index folks came out with the learning indicator. I love that one.
Yes.
It's a 40-question test, 10 minutes. And, the secret to that test is you finish it. And that means you don't spend too much time on each one over analyzing it. And so the people that do really well are okay going, well, I'm not sure about this. I'm going to guess. I'm okay with failing on that. I'm going to move on to the next one. And so that's an indicator of how quickly you learn. And I love hiring based on the learning indicator. The ones that I want to be low on the learning indicator are not that they don't know how to learn, but the accountants or someone doing your payroll. You want them to be slow and methodical and make sure they get it right. But that's a great tool as well.
Do you use predictive index for potential franchisees and staff in-house?
Staff, I'm waiting a little bit on the franchise partners. It can be a little bit dangerous because I've seen it where I've brought people in that are perfect. They fit the profile exactly, and they don't make it. And I've brought in others that weren't a great fit, or they're off on a couple and they do really well. So I think it works really well for employees because you have this specific, because they're working for you and have this tight culture and team where, franchise partners, it's entrepreneurial, go figure it out. And, passion, motivation, grit, determination, those are the things that I think make franchise partners successful. Not necessarily that's what's going to make it easier for you. If you're a fit on that predictive index, it's going to be easier for you. But I've seen people who were challenged in a couple of those areas and they blew through it. They made it happen. They figured it out.
I'll give you that. I'd say there was a number of surprises for me as well in using PI. Sometimes it's the right person, but it's the wrong time in their life. Right? There's stuff going on in somebody's personal life that they could be the right profile, but they shouldn't be buying a franchise right now.
Yeah. And, I think accountability is one thing. I always tell our franchise partners, you've got two hats. So one is the person running the franchise and the other one is the owner of the business. So, oftentimes when I coach them, like, put on your owner's hat, and you've got this person that you're paying to run your company. How much would you pay this person? No, by the way, it's you wearing that other hat. How much would you pay this person to do what they're doing today? And sometimes, would you fire that person? And so you've got to have that conversation with yourself. And sometimes you aren't the person that needs to be doing the things, and you need to bring in someone else to do it.
What about, you started out with Shelf Genie, right? And now Art of Drawers. I'm curious to know, I want to kind of shift gears here to your franchisee profile. Who is the right franchisee? What do you think are some of the traits that they need to be successful?
Yeah, I always tell when I'm talking to franchise consultants, who are we looking for? And I kind of start out with send me the smart ones, the sharp ones, and they kind of laugh. But there's some truth to that. I want people who are empire builders that, can look at what we have and being smart. There's lots of kinds of intelligence. So emotional intelligence, they need to be very high on EQ. They're building teams, they need to be very driven, and they need to have that skill to build a team. Our franchise partners really have to focus on one thing, which is building a design team, building a sales team. And luckily, they don't ever have to hire employees. So all of our designers and installers are independent contractors. They're part-time. This is in addition to something else they're doing. So a lot of our designers are interior designers, professional organizers, stay-at-home moms who had professional careers, and now they've got time to, and they can set their own schedules, and we book appointments for them. They can say where they want to go, and those are the areas we book appointments. But it's building that team, which is great because they can go build a team of 5, 10, 20 designers. They're not promising appointments. And the thing I like about our model, when you hire employees, I have to go into our office every day and look my employees deep in their eyes, into their soul to figure out, do they really want to be here? Because if they don't, they're not going to tell you. They've learned to smile and wave at the camera. So with this model, our franchise partners, anybody that's on that team wants to be a part of it, and they're doing it because they want to be a part of it. But that's their job, is to go out and build that team. And we want people who know how to build a team that are really going to inspire people to want to be a part of it. And it's not just about the money. Our designers make 80 to 120 an hour, but if you talk to our designers, the money's great, but that's not the big motivator for most people, especially when it's not the thing that's feeding their family. They want to be a part of something. So we want people that are team builders, that are empire builders. What I found with Shelf Genie, it happens, I think, in most franchises. Everybody's got a number. Everybody wants to make millions and millions of dollars, but everybody's got a number. And when they get to that number, the question is, are they going to push past that number and money isn't the thing anymore and building something is the thing? Or the money's the thing and I'm comfortable? Because, you get in our model, you build a great design team. We train you find some installers, we train them for you. We're doing all the marketing placement for you. The phone's ringing, we're answering the phone, we're scheduling the appointments. We're doing everything for you for the most part, other than building that sales team. And once you build that design team, you can kind of coast and work the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week.
Wow.
I saw it happen with Shelf Genie franchisees, and a lot of them would go buy another business because they had the time to do it, or they just enjoyed life. And we're not looking for the 4-hour work week folks, but we're also not looking for the 41 plus hour work week folks. Maybe in the beginning, but we want people that are going to scale but not slow down when they can, because they want to build something bigger.
Okay, so the primary function of my job as a franchise partner is to build this design team, right? And this design team, then, am I also getting installers? Or my design team, are they also doing installation as well?
It's 2 different groups. In fact, we have 3. So you're recruiting designers to go out. You're a designer as well. So you're the sales manager. You learn how to design. You're training others. We've got great training material, for you to take out there to do that. But you're building that team. You're identifying install partners that pay to come to our training. We train them for you, but they're invested. They come to our training. They get a percentage of the job. They're making 40, 60 an hour, and we're giving them the work. And a lot of them are handyman, independent contractors that also can get extra work out from our clients because we're paying them to go into homes for potential clients. So you're identifying them. They're paying to come to training, and then you're assigning them jobs.
Okay.
And assign a job, they're responsible for everything after that, putting in the measurements, receiving the materials, inspecting it, scheduling the installing it, and collecting final payment. And that's when they get paid, after they do all those things. So really, you're just assigning jobs to them. There's certainly cases where you need to monitor it and get involved with an issue that happens every now and then. But for the most part, you're focused on building that design team. And then you're also doing local events. So we do really well at home shows, any kind of event. We do boat shows, RV shows, antique shows. Some of them are smaller events, so hiring event specialists. We don't want you standing in that home show booth long term. We want you to be around it, but we want you to build a team that's really good at standing in those trade show events and home show events to schedule appointments.
Allan, one of the most common questions I get from emerging founders, though, is finding their franchise partners, especially the first 10, as you probably remember what it was like when you first started out. Where did you find your first dozen?
We work with, so in the beginning with Shelf Genie, I was a dealer program before I franchised. So we were a dealer model where we teach you how to, sell a little bit, how to install a little bit. It was 3 days of training. We didn't give you any support after that. Otherwise, you're an external franchise. But, a dealer model is really just like throwing spaghetti against the wall. You just have to keep doing it. Some things stick. No buy-in. People just kind of come and go. But there was 5 of my dealers that were kind of doing it full time and doing it pretty well. So I started day one with 5 franchise partners, which is great because we had validation. It's not so great because they weren't, none of them made it over the next 5 years. And, they didn't fail, but they kind of dropped out or sold because they didn't fit with the system and they weren't those empire builders. But we had 10 pretty good ones and good validation. We always had good validation. But the other problem was if you don't have the right people, your validation might be good. You might be able to sell, but what you're selling is your validation. So what people hear when they're validating, this is my day in the life. These are the things I'm doing. Our system didn't validate half the things that they should be doing. So we're intentionally bringing people on now that buy into it, that are doing those things. We're holding them accountable from the beginning, and holding franchise partners accountable is really as simple as getting alignment and agreement on who's supposed to do what. So it's not parental, it's an agreement between adults to say, this is what's going to make us successful. This is what we're responsible for. This is what you're responsible for. And then, holding them accountable is just reminding them that this is where you need to focus and your priorities are, because this is what's going to get you there. But our system validates already that this is what's important. This is what we're doing. So I think getting the right ones is not just about validation. I think that's what we think about a lot is 10 people that go, this is great. But if it's the wrong 10 people, you're going to bring in more people that look like them than look like the ones you want. And, that's the other challenge that I tell our franchise partners is call me during validation. If you see a yellow flag and certainly a red flag, let me know. I will and have turned down franchise partners. We truly do award. When you're dealing with franchise consultants, that's always a really tough conversation. And a lot of them are done with the different consulting networks. But we try to identify that really early up front. So I work a lot with our sales development team. We use Rep'em.
Yeah.
So of outsourced franchise sales, which I highly recommend you do as an emerging. I think emerging franchisors are good at either selling them or supporting them.
Okay.
It's really hard to do both in the beginning, especially. So we've chose support is the thing we're going to do really well.
Okay.
Selling. But I work with our team and we're very aligned on, not bringing that person to discovery day that I'm going to have to turn down. And that's why I'm doing a lot of founders calls early up front. But our franchise partners are dialed into this is what we're looking for. And we don't want anyone coming in that's not a good fit for them, because that's not good for anybody.
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, you said something that I cannot be overstated, and that is either being really good at franchise sales or support, but you better be really good at support, right? So look, there's founders out there that have these emerging franchise concepts that are growing by leaps and bounds by the amount of franchises they've quote unquote sold and are unopened because of how amazing the FSO is. Yep. But at the same time, I know there are some out there that do not have the support and they don't have the infrastructure. So let's talk about that, since there's so many emerging founders listening to this, on the importance of having your ducks in a row before you unleash an FSO to selling franchises.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it there's good FSOs and there's not good FSOs. Now, when I started franchising 2008, the FSO model was really rent a franchise developer.
Yes.
It was rent a cop, rent a mall cop. So, I got my guy, and that's really the support I got was, here's your guy. And he knows how to sell franchises, and that was it. So, that's when St. Gregory came along, and Jeff Hurd did a really good job innovating that whole space where there's multiple people. You've got the person that sets up the appointment for the director. You've got the director. You got the VP that interviews them afterwards. You've got this whole team doing the marketing and setting up discovery days. That's been evolved, and Jeff's doing it again, and continues to evolve. But Rep'em, in fact, Nick worked with St. Gregory on that, so he's taken it, done some things with it. But that model has evolved, and really where it's evolved to now is they support emerging franchises in every single area. So, I know Rep'em, they call it Build 'em, and there's Brand 'em, and there's Grow 'em, which is the franchise sales piece, but they do full service support wherever you need it. So with us, it's really on the franchise sales because we've done it. But the Build 'em piece, opening up and finding these locations, but that's where, if you've got a franchise, an FSO that can't help you with all those things and identify those gaps and fill it in, and they're just running and gunning and trying to, overload you, and they know you don't have the capacity. They're out there, they'll do it, but the good ones, and if you talk to the founders that are working with them and do your due diligence, because it's almost like buying a franchise. It's a long-term relationship
Sure.
when you sign up with an FSO, and they need to be doing the same things that our franchise partners expect from us, which is best practice sharing, really partnering with you on and having alignment at the end is really critical. So pick one, but pick the right one. I talked to 8 of them, which is almost really all of them. And I've known them all, and it took me almost a year. I think when I got down to the final line with Repham, they were exhausted. Nick and Rob and I have talked, quite a bit about all the details, including all the details of how they're going to support us and what they could do. But that's a really critical partner, and if you get it wrong, you're going to regret it.
Sure. So obviously bringing prospects in that are validating. And I wrote a term down that you mentioned a couple times that I want to bring back here: empire builders. So your top tier franchise owners, franchise partners, those are the empire builders, right? What specifically do those empire builders look like that are different, that top 20%?
When we have discovery days, and even when I'm doing founders call, I'm evaluating them not by what they're saying, because the B players and C players are really good at interviewing because they've done a lot. People, and when they're in a buying mode, they're saying all the right things.
Right.
Listening very carefully to the questions they're asking. Are they thoughtful? Are they thinking big with their questions? Are they asking a question about something that really doesn't matter? And the other thing that we have going for us is, with Art of Drawers, we upgraded the brand significantly. We added better products. We, our process is better. We've just built this, Lexus to the Toyota, and Shelf Genie is the Toyota. But by the way, Toyota is great. It wasn't a Toyota really until Lexus came along.
True.
So I'm not putting down Shelf Genie at all. It's a great brand. And we need more Shelf Genies out there. We need more Art of Drawers out there. The reason our industry doesn't exist, we're about $100 million industry, and that's mostly Shelf Genie, some Art of Drawers, and some guys in trucks. That's our industry. The closet industry, which same model, same average sales, same unit economics, and same demographic. We actually pick up some older people that never would update their closets, but they need the access. But same demographic. You want to take a guess at how big the closet industry is?
I have no idea, but considering California closet's been around a bit, I'm sure it's pretty big. What do you got?
The closet industry is 60 billion, and we're 100 million. And we have same demographic, same unit economics, all that going for us. And the reason we're not growing, and the reason Shelf Genie is only the company that's ever scaled it, is this software we built. Because our barrier to entry, closet companies would love to do what we do, but they're putting up 2 millimeter walls and 24 inches apart and putting standard stuff in it.
Right.
We're going to your cabinets and measuring down to the millimeter, width, depth, height, slope, scoops with wood. And it's very precise, and we almost have infinite SKUs because everything we do is custom built. So our software handles that. We can price accurately in the home and stick the landing on cost of goods plus or minus a couple percent. We can fulfill that order. We integrate with our manufacturing partners, taking all the complexity out of it with technology. And that's really, I think, going back to the question you asked before, people and technology is what you need to be focused on if you're going to grow your business. If you are not a technology company that happens to do whatever thing your business does, you're not going to make it long term.
Wow.
Recession or not, you're just not going to make it.
Sure.
So we're a technology company, and we're taking that technology. Our franchise partners are really excited about this. They're going to grow their Art of Drawers core business. We've added refacing, which is, a $10,000, $15,000 average sale. We've added that to the mix. So we've done a lot of things with the brand that they can do in their core business. But once they get that going, and this kind of speaks to Empire Builder, they built their design team. There's things they can do to it. Instead of going out and getting, either laying on the beach or getting another brand to add on, they can go out and license this software to closet companies, countertop companies, refacers, lots of different verticals, but just the closet industry itself. They can't do what we do, but they love to come out and design your closet and do what we do. So our vision is for our franchise partners, and this is what they're excited about, is building an industry, which means building competitors. It's a totally different mindset. If you talk to, at least when I was there, Shelf Genie franchisees, they heard the word competitor, and all of a sudden, their eyes would, light up, and every part of their brain was activated in a flight or fight response
Uh-huh.
because they came into it going, hey, this is great. There's no competitors in this space other than some guys in trucks. That's the problem, by the way. We pay, our item 19 says $475 for 2022. Our new one's coming out with a different number. But, if you look at 475 is what we pay on average to get in someone's home. Closet companies pay between $50 and $100 to get in someone's home because there's so many people doing it. That's the power. Industries are great, and industry is nothing in a collection of competitors. And not being an industry, we're paying a lot to educate people on the fact that you can even do this. When Art of Drawers goes into a market, Shelf Genie does better. We all do better. The more people we have doing it, the better. That's how the closet industry is $60 billion and why they're paying less than $100 to get in the home.
Wow. And so going back to the technology though, you have the ability to, you're custom fitting, right? You're custom sizing everything. I'm imagining if I was a franchise partner, one of the challenges I would have is waste. And it sounds like the technology eliminates the biggest problem potentially, right? Is not measuring right and waste of product.
Yeah. So we're manufacturing it for them with our manufacturing partners. So your designer sells it. You approve the sale in our system, assign it to installer. They get a measurement sheet. They go out, write down the measurements. We teach them how to measure accurately down to the millimeter. They put the measurements in. Then we interface with our manufacturing partners who custom build everything. So you don't have any inventory other than initial rail inventory. Then we replenish it as you go. But it's just-in-time inventory. So the product arrives, the installer inspects it, and they put it in. There is no waste. If it's mismeasured, I learned this after a couple of years of not doing this was, our install partners would not measure it correctly, it'd be built wrong, and then we'd order again and they put it in. It wasn't until we started charging them and they pay for rebuilding it. It doesn't happen anymore, or it only happens once. So they're paying attention, and it's really attention to detail. So our franchise partners don't have any challenges with waste or mismeasurements. And the technology handles a lot of that. There's certain things it catches. There's a lot of algorithms that catch any kind of discrepancy of measurements. It goes, this can't be, or this shouldn't be. And it highlights it, asks the questions. It eliminates a lot of that risk.
Awesome. All right, Allan. So we got almost 27 locations now. You did 205 with Shelf Genie. So how big is big with Art of Drawers?
303 years. So
300 in 3 years. How many states do you think that's going to be in? Is that you talking across the country?
Well, we're not counting North Dakota, and probably not, maybe South Dakota. There's like a couple territories there. But there's some states that the entire state would be our territory because we're, 150,000 households or 375,000 people. So, I would guess we're probably at, 35, 40 states. But we're also really focused on penetrating, going deep versus wide. And our territories were way too big. We're talking about iFranchise Group. We both work with them.
Yes.
And that's what they told me to do. And they gave me this range, like it could be from here to here.
Uh-huh.
And I picked the biggest number.
I did too.
Yep. And that's a mistake. And it's a mistake for the franchise partner because they end up, you sell them big territories and they're literally just, all they can do is carpet bomb from a marketing standpoint.
Right.
They can't go deep and focus. So we're doing a lot of that. So we're less concerned about, and I don't see California being on the map very much for us. California is a very difficult state, I think, for everybody, but especially for us, like to be a franchise, to do what we do, which is really what closet companies do, or even a blinds company. The same thing a blinds company do. We're measuring it. It's being built offsite, and we're literally putting in the cabinets like blinds company do in the windows. You have to have 5 years of industry experience just to get a license to do this in California. So California is tough. If we get someone with a good construction background that is a right fit, but other than that, it's just a lot of difficulty. So not a huge fan of California when it comes to operating a business. But other than California, I think we'll be in most of the states.
Okay. Can I ask you if you have an exit strategy here with Art of Drawers?
Yes, I think, building up the system, the exit strategy for me is moving over to so our software company is a separate company that licenses the software to not only Shelf Genie, but Art of Drawers, but is going to be the partner that works with our franchise partners to go license it to every countertop company, closet company in their area. And our franchise partners are going to get a royalty on all those sales. So they're super excited and aligned with us. Continuing to develop the software, I spent a lot of time there and have for years. We spent $5 million doing it. It's a passion to continue to make us a tech company, and to evolve. We are looking at the big buzzword of AI and how do we integrate that, but how do we make things more efficient and effective for our franchise partners so they have to spend very little time on running their business, either the things we're doing or what the technology does. So my exit strategy is to go shift into that. And that's where we're going to build $1 billion industry together with our franchise partners. So that's my exit strategy. As far as building the company, I think it really comes down to, at some point, we'll get to a size and we'll talk to the right person. It could be a strategic, but I think, private equity, you find the right partner that's going to help take you to the next level. Something that is going to bring value to the franchise partners and not just switching ownership is something that I think would be really interesting to do down the road when it gets to the right point. But I'm not looking, to hit the exit button at any specific time. But the software piece, I think, is going to be really synergistic. And what our franchise partners are looking to do a year or two after they've got the business around themselves.
Yeah, that is exciting. Allan, if someone was interested in learning more about Art of Drawers, how can they get more franchise information?
Yeah, just go to our website, artofdrawers.com. There's a franchising button. It's a nice one-pager. It's got some basic information, but fill out a form and some from our team will reach out to you.
Awesome. Okay, I want to finish one more thing here. I call it the tip jar. I end every podcast with it. With the franchise community is so generous, and you've been so generous with sharing your experience. I think there's been so many nuggets here that we've laid out for a lot of emerging founders. But if I was going to franchise my concept and had not done it yet, is there a piece of advice that you'd give me before I jump into franchising?
Yeah, I think the advice, and we talked about this early on, and of course, all the things we talked about apply. Like, you've got to make sure you get the right people and the culture and technology. But I go back to what Dave Hood told me. I asked him that question. I'm like, what's the one reason why people fail? And he gave me an answer which is pretty universal: lack of capital. It's the only mistake you make where they take you out of the game. You can make all the mistakes you want, but running out of money, you can if you have enough money, you can make mistakes forever and as many as you like. But running out of money is the only reason you're going to get taken out of the game. So whatever, it's like renovating a house, whatever you think it's going to cost you, multiply by 3 or 4. Unit economics for franchises are really tough. Like, if you look at, you get to $1 million in system sales in your first year or two. If you have a 7% royalty, that's $70,000 of revenue. And you've got to build a team to support those folks. You're not just going to have one person or 2 people. You're probably going to have 3 or 4. And then you get to that, $10 million in revenue. That's great, but you have $700,000. And, what does that get you? Probably not maybe what you built on this team, but getting to break even in franchising is a very long, painful process, and not being properly capitalized. You're either going to get there very painfully because your franchise partners aren't going to get the support they need. And you're not going to be able to build that team that they need. And everybody's going to get frustrated along the way. And then you end up getting there and you've got a very frustrated group of people, your team and the franchise partners.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, is it not?
Yep. And that's why, look at sources of capital. Debt is definitely an instrument. I know a lot of people that do it, but when you get to a certain point, I think that's also the piece. Day one, what valuation is somebody give you from your idea? But if you've got good corporate locations with good, and that's what a lot of founders have, is they've done it really well in 1 or more locations. They've got that. If you can demonstrate you have the ability to scale through having a great FSO and you've built a good team, you got a good structure, you can put a value on it. Franchises typically get a 10 to 12 exit on EBITDA. So if you can put a value and have a plan to say, and this is how many units, this is what our model looks like, the exits are pretty significant down the road. So there's investors that like investing early on, and you can get a decent valuation where you're not giving away the farm, but you're bringing on some capital, and you've got some folks. If you get the right ones that we talked about earlier, it's a great way to grow.
Allan, this has been great. I appreciate you being on. I can't believe we've kind of run in similar circles for like 15, 20 years, but have never met before. So it's a pleasure to have you on and to finally meet you here face to face, at least over Zoom.
Same.
So thanks again for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its hosts do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.